This is the Ayla side-to-side knit shawl pattern. This is a triangular knit shawl that is worked side to side with an increasing section first and then a decreasing section. The edging is worked simultaneously with the shawl body for a seamless finish. You will need 2 balls of Be So Vivid yarn, my number 4 worsted weight self-striping yarn, and you will also need a size 6.5 millimeter set of knitting needles. Let's get started. In the download pattern, you receive the written instructions with line-by-line instructions for the entire project with stitch counts, and you also get a chart for the increasing and decreasing section. On a knitting chart, you'll want to follow along from the side that the numbers are written. So for row 1, the number is on the right-hand side, so you will read that right to left. You will also need a stitch marker for this project. The sample shawl is shown in colorway Berry Nice, and in the tutorial today I'll be using color Pinking of You, also another of the 15 colorways available in Be So Vivid yarn. Let's start by reading row 1 on the chart, and then we will cast on and work row 1. So if you read along with the pattern, it says cast on 5 stitches, then row 1 on the chart says knit 2, yarn over, knit 2, yarn over, knit 1. Notice that there is a gap between these 2 sections of the chart. That is because this side is the edging that will continually increase and decrease in stitch count to create that scalloped edge, and over here we're increasing consistently to create the increasing section of the shawl because it's side to side and triangle. Then over here in the decreasing section, the edging remains exactly the same, but then we decrease back down on the other side. So this is where we'll be placing our stitch marker to help you remember what to do on either side of the shawl. Okay, so now that we read that, let's cast on with our yarn and work row 1. This is a cake yarn, so you can pull from the center if you like. You can work from the outside or inside, doesn't matter. And I'm going to do a simple long tail cast on. We're only casting on 5 stitches, so you only need, I don't know, 18 inches or so for your tail. We want to make sure you still have sufficient tail at the end so that you can weave in your loose ends. I'm going to place a slip knot onto my knitting needle. That counts as my first stitch. Hold my tail in front and my working yarn in back. I do have videos showing you step by step how to do long tail cast on if this is brand new to you. And we're going to cast on 4 more stitches, pulling a loop through the loop and placing it on the needle. Okay, so now we have our 5 stitches cast on and we're ready to begin row 1. Also, I'm going to be using a stitch marker, and I like to use a contrast color to whatever color my yarn is. So since I'm using pink yarn, I will use a blue stitch marker. You only need 1 for this project, and I'm going to close it because I will be placing it on the needles. Okay, row 1, knit 2. Make sure you grab your working yarn and not your tail yarn. That's a very easy mistake to make, regardless of whether you're a new knitter or an advanced knitter. We're going to knit the first 2 stitches, yarn over, knit the next 2 stitches, then place our marker and yarn over and knit 1. And this is what the end of row 1 should look like. Row 2, we're going to turn our work, knit the first stitch, purl the next stitch, slip our marker, and knit the next 5 stitches. And you should have 7 stitches on your needles at this point. This is what your work should look like at the end of row 2, and again, you should have 7 stitches on your needles. Let's go back to our chart now. Okay, and we're going to read row 3 here. It says knit 2, yarn over, knit 3, then that gap is where we're going to slip our marker, yarn over, knit 2. And if we go down to row 3 on the pattern, it says the same thing. Knit 2, yarn over, knit 3, slip marker, yarn over, knit 2. Let's do that with our yarn now. Knit 2, yarn over, knit 3, slip marker, yarn over, and knit 2. You should have 9 stitches at the end of row 3. And now row 4, and all even numbered rows going forward, all even numbered rows will be exactly the same as this row. It's knit 1, purl all the way to the marker. So this section will be increasing as we go. That's the shawl side. Slip your marker and knit to end. So you want to memorize that row, and if you don't memorize it, it's okay. If you just want to refer back to row 4 for the instructions for all even numbered rows. Okay, this is what your work should look like at the end of row 4. You should have 9 stitches. Let's go back to our chart and pattern now to read row 5. Okay, row 5 on the chart. Knit 2, yarn over, knit 4, slip marker, yarn over, knit 3. So let's go back to row 5 on the pattern now. Knit 2, yarn over, knit 4, slip marker, yarn over, knit 3 for a total of 11 stitches. Okay, let's do that with our yarn now. Knit 2, yarn over, knit 4, slip marker, yarn over, and knit 3. You should have 11 stitches at the end of row 5. And then row 6, again, a repeat of row 4, so let's read it as we go. It's knit 1, purl to the marker, slip the marker, and then knit to end. Also, on the even numbered rows, we will not be doing any increasing or decreasing. The stitch count remains the same on the even numbered rows, and the stitch count increases on the odd numbered rows. And it does fluctuate a little bit because of the edging, and I'll explain that when we get there as well. Let's go back to our chart now in our pattern for row 7. Row 7 on the chart reads knit 2, yarn over, knit 5, slip marker, yarn over, knit 4. And let's read that on the pattern. It's knit 2, yarn over, knit 5, slip marker, yarn over, knit 4 for a total of 13 stitches. Okay, we'll do that with our yarn now. Okay, this is row 7, knit 2, yarn over, knit 5, slip the marker, yarn over, and knit 4. And then row 8 will be a repeat of row 4, and I'm going to read it as we do it again to help you to recognize the pattern. It is knit 1, purl across to the marker, slip the marker, and knit to the end of the row. Okay, this is what your work should look like at the end of row 8, and you should have 13 stitches on your needles. Back to the chart for row 9. Row 9 begins with binding off 4 stitches. That's the beginning of the scalloped edge of the pattern repeat for the edging. Then knit 4, slip the marker, yarn over. Whoops, I'm looking at the wrong row. Sorry. Bind off 4 stitches, knit 4 stitches, slip marker, yarn over, and knit 5. Let's read that on row 9 here now. Bind off 4 stitches, knit 4, slip marker, yarn over, knit 5, and we're going to have 10 stitches on our needles. So this is where the stitch count fluctuates a little bit. We are increasing stitches each row for the shawl side, but we decrease by 4 stitches every 10 rows for the edging. So there is a slight fluctuation there, but in general, we are increasing every row to create the larger section of the shawl. And you'll just need to refer back to the pattern to check your stitch count to make sure that your work lines up with the pattern. Okay, so let's do row 9 with our yarn now. Okay, and there's a trick that I want to teach you about binding off in the middle of the row, which will save you a lot of mistakes going forward. When you're binding off in the middle of the row, you have to count things in a slightly different way to really get a good grasp of what you're doing. So when we're binding off 1 stitch, we're actually knitting 2 stitches first to bind off the first one. There's our first bound off stitch. So then we'll count bind off 2, bind off 3, and bind off 4. Now, when we bound off that 4th stitch, remember we had a first knit stitch to create the first bind off. So you have to remember that that last stitch remaining is not part of the bind off if you count it the way I counted. And that way you count it as the first stitch of the next set of instructions, which said to knit 4. So that's your knit 1, then knit 2, 3, and 4. Slip the marker, yarn over, and knit 5. This is what your work should look like at the end of row 9, and you should have 10 stitches on your needles. We're still increasing on the shawl side. We just had to decrease on the edging side to create our scalloped edge. And so this completes our repeat for the scalloped edge, and we will continue repeating this as we go along in the pattern. But let's do our even numbered row still. So this is for row 10, it is knit 1, purl to the marker, slip the marker, and knit to end. All right, and so this is what your work should look like after the end of 10 rows, or row 10, and you can see we definitely have that defined scallop going on for our edging, and we do have our increase section begun for the shawl. It is this section here that we have now finished our first repeat, and we'll keep repeating these 10 rows as we continue increasing on this side of the shawl. So rows 11 through 20 are a repeat of 1 through 10, and you'll just keep repeating these 10 rows as you go for the increase section. I'm going to do 2 more repeats of this, and then I will show you how we work the decrease section for the opposite side of the shawl. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions at all, please leave them for me in the comments. Everything we talked about today, you can find as links in the video description below. Let us make time to create, share, and inspire today and every day. I'll see you in the next video.